Hello, I'm Gary Parker. Welcome to CS140L, Introduction to Linux Administration. Let me show you a little bit about the course. This here is the textbook you need to get, and you can get it either through VitalSource or Amazon or anywhere else you want to find it, and you could do a digital version or a print version, it's up to you, but you need to get it right away. We're going to cover the whole book between this winter CS140L and the spring CS240L. Course homepage, you should have access to this now in Canvas. Everything comes from this page right here. There's assignments each week, and sometimes there's other pages that I need you to read where I add to what's in the book. There'll be a reading assignment each week, read and do, and there'll be at least two parts to that. One is you read the chapters I mentioned here, chapters 1 and 2, and then you write a brief outline about those chapters, and I'd recommend doing it in a Google Doc. That way you can add to it over a few days. Alternatively, when you submit the assignment, a little text box pops up at the bottom, which is a little word processor, and you could type up a list there. And I want it to be a nice, neat, unordered list here, bulleted list. And then it's up to you how many details. I want the main topics at least, and then what are the subtopics under each main topic. If you want to write more notes than that or type more notes, that's always a good idea to help you prepare for the quizzes that you're going to take and prepare for the final exam and ultimately the CompTIA Linux Plus certification, which preparing you to kick butt on that exam is one of the main priorities for this class. The other priority is just getting used to using the Linux operating system and used to using the command line to do work on an operating system and the services it provides. Chapter 1 is about installing Linux, so I have some more details here. You should have 2 distributions installed, one being your main one and another one to mess around with here and there. So for example, the computer I'm on now is running Debian Linux. I used to use Ubuntu. I've played with Mint. So I would like you to have a Debian type version of Linux and then a Red Hat type version of Linux. There are versions of Linux that are neither like Debian nor like Red Hat. That's cool too. I just want you to have a couple of different ones because although they use the same kernel, for example, if they're using the current stable Linux kernel, the way that is organized in terms of the services and other software is going to be different. So you want to be comfortable using a variety of different Linuxes and understand how they differ. To do that, you could either, say, dual boot your computer, have it start up, and you can choose which version of Linux you want to go to, like maybe Debian, or I'm using Rocky also, or you could set up a virtual machine on your computer to run other operating systems. So maybe you have a Windows computer and you might have VirtualBox set up on there, and in VirtualBox you have a Debian and you have a Fedora, for example. Virtual Machine Manager is another virtualization system that you can run operating systems within a given operating system. And we'll learn more about that idea later. So this week, your main goal is to get a Linux installed and then another Linux running somewhere. Alternative to using dual boot or a virtualization system is to run Linux off a USB drive, for example. So I have a page here which is also linked on the homepage, Linux USB, which gives one way to set up a Linux USB that's live. So you plug in the USB, you reboot the computer. Instead of booting from the hard drive, you boot from the USB drive, and you run Linux off that USB drive. So that's another way to experiment with another version of Linux. And then there's going to be a quiz for each chapter after chapter 1. There's really nothing much to quiz on in chapter 1. It's just installing Linux. Which used to be a big deal, but these days it's not. I find Linux easier to install than Windows, for example, or a new version of Mac. Next week we'll cover chapter 3, and there's a read and do there where you're going to read the chapter and give me an outline. And then in addition to the outline, you're going to give me a a script file that shows all the commands that you tried in chapter 3. So command line work starts in chapter 3. And I'll talk more about that next week. Similar chapter 4, a whole bunch of command line work to do. So the read and do there is similar to the outline. And then you're going to create what's called a script file, which documents everything you typed into the command line and all the output from those commands. You're undoubtedly going to run into errors when you run commands because you're new to running commands. And even when I'm running a new command that I haven't used before, I'm going to error a few times before I get the command right to do what I want. As far as that goes, you can enter a terminal in a couple of different ways. You can use the terminal app in your graphical user interface. So here I'm running GNOME for my graphical user interface in Linux, and when I boot the computer, it boots straight into the graphical user interface. You can also have a Linux that boots into the command line, and then you could optionally or never start a graphical user interface. It's up to you. But you're going to get used to running commands like list, show me what's in the current directory, what directory am I in right now, who am I, things like that. And that's going to be more next week. So let's see, I think those are the main points I wanted to get to you right now. Class is online all the time. So every week, whether we meet physically or not, you have stuff to do. So we're not going to meet physically this week, but next week we will, and we'll meet pretty much every other Monday in Boardman after this week here. That's it for now. So get busy getting Linux installed, and if you don't already have it installed. What else did I want to mention? Oh, virtualization. Again, I have VirtualBox installed on this computer, and in VirtualBox, I have a Rocky kernel that or a Rocky, it's more than just the kernel, a Rocky system that I downloaded from the Rocky website, and I can run that here. In this case, I have it set to just run a command line interface, no graphical user interface. I also have the virtual machine manager, which I found slightly easier to use, more on that later, than VirtualBox. And sometimes you'll have to enter some kind of password to verify you are who you say you are, because you're running something that runs some services at the root level instead of the user level. I have a couple of other versions of Debian I was playing around with right here. So I'll give another video later about VirtualBox versus Virtual Machine Manager. Welcome to the Linux class. I'm looking forward to working with you. Take care. Do good work.